I overheard my daughter tell her husband, when Dad dies we get everything. I rewrote the will that same night. At the reading both faces went white. Family story. I never meant to listen. I was just walking past the kitchen doorway on a quiet Tuesday evening in our little house on Maple Ridge Lane. The same house where my late wife Carol and I raised our only daughter, Claire. The same house where the floorboards still creaked in the exact same spots after 38 years. Claire and her husband Derek had come over for dinner, the way they did every other week. Derek worked construction in the next county over. Claire taught 3rd grade at the elementary school 3 miles down the road. On the surface everything looked fine. I had stepped out to the garage to grab a fresh bag of coffee filters. When I came back through the side door I heard their voices low and close, the kind of tone people use when they think no one else is around. Claire's words stopped me cold right there in the hallway. When Dad dies we get everything, she said. The house, the accounts, the life insurance. We won't have to stretch every paycheck anymore. We can finally move into something nicer, maybe even get that place near the lake Derek keeps talking about. Derek answered just as soft. You sure you still got that much left after the medical bills from your mom? Positive, Claire said. I checked the statements last time I helped him with the online banking. It's all still there. Once he's gone it's ours. No siblings to split it with. Just us. I stood frozen with the coffee filters in my hand. The refrigerator hummed. The old wall clock in the living room kept ticking. My own daughter was counting the days until I was gone so she could cash in. I didn't make a sound. I turned around, walked back out to the garage, and sat on the cold concrete step for a long time until my hands stopped shaking. When I finally went inside again I poured the coffee like nothing had happened. Claire smiled at me across the table and asked if I wanted more pot roast. Derek talked about a job site that was running behind schedule. I nodded and answered in the right places. Inside my chest something hard and quiet had settled in. That night after they left I sat at the kitchen table with the folder of papers Carol and I had put together years earlier. The will was simple. Everything went to Claire. The house, the savings, the small investment account, the paid-off truck. We had written it that way because she was our only child and we trusted her completely. Carol used to say Claire had a good heart. I used to believe that too. I called my attorney the next morning. Tom Brennan had handled our closing papers when we bought this house and he had rewritten the will after Carol's cancer diagnosis. He was retired now but still kept a small office above the hardware store downtown. I drove over at 9 o'clock sharp. Tom listened without interrupting while I told him exactly what I had overheard. When I finished he leaned back in his chair and rubbed his jaw. You want to cut her out completely? He asked. No, I said. I want to change it so she gets something, but not the house and not the bulk of the money. I want the rest to go somewhere it will actually matter. We spent 2 hours working it out. I left half of the cash savings to Claire. The house, the truck, and the larger investment account would go to the local Children's Hospital Foundation in Carol's name. Carol had spent her last months there. The nurses had been kind when nothing else was. Tom drew up the new documents that afternoon. I signed them before the notary at the bank. By 5 o'clock the old will was gone and the new one was locked in Tom's safe. I didn't tell Claire. I didn't change my routine. I still cooked Sunday dinners. I still fixed the leaky faucet in their guest bathroom when Derek asked. I still sat through the school Christmas program and clapped when Claire's class sang. Every time she hugged me goodbye I felt the words from that kitchen conversation echo in my head. 6 months later I had the heart episode. Nothing dramatic. Just a tightness in the chest while I was raking leaves. The doctors at County General kept me overnight for tests and put me on new medication. Claire rushed to the hospital and stayed until they released me. She cried in the waiting room and held my hand. Derek brought coffee and asked the nurses careful questions. I watched them both and wondered how much of it was real and how much was performance. When I got home Claire insisted on staying for a few days to help. She cleaned the kitchen, restocked the refrigerator, and sorted my mail. One afternoon I found her in the small office off the living room looking through the file drawer where I kept the bank statements. She closed the drawer quickly when I walked in. "Just making sure everything is in order," she said with a bright smile. "In case something happens again." I nodded and didn't say a word. The real change came in late spring. My neighbor Frank from 2 doors down had a mild stroke and his kids put him in a care facility across town. The house went up for sale. Claire and Derek started talking more openly about needing space, about wanting a yard big enough for the dog they planned to get, about how my place was too much for one person to keep up. They never said the words directly to me, but the implication hung in the air every time they visited. I let them talk. I kept my own counsel. Then came the day Tom Brennan called and said it was time. He had reviewed everything one last time and suggested we do a formal reading while I was still healthy enough to see their faces. I agreed. I invited Claire and Derek over on a Saturday afternoon under the excuse of needing help going through some of Carol's old boxes. Tom arrived 15 minutes early with the sealed envelope and sat at the dining room table like he was just an old family friend stopping by. Claire and Derek walked in expecting another quiet afternoon of sorting photo albums. When Tom opened his briefcase and laid out the documents, their expressions shifted from polite interest to something tighter. "Your father asked me to go over the updated will with you both present," Tom said in his calm courtroom voice. "He wanted everything clear while he is still here to answer questions." Claire's smile froze. Derek sat up straighter. Tom began reading. The half of the savings account still went to Claire. That part landed soft. Then he reached the house. The property at 214, Maple Ridge Lane, free and clear, was to be sold upon my death and the proceeds directed to the Children's Hospital Foundation in memory of Carol Ellis. The investment account followed the same path. The truck went to the foundation as well, to be sold and the money added to the fund. Silence filled the room so completely I could hear the refrigerator kick on in the kitchen. Claire's face drained of color. Derek's jaw worked like he was chewing something tough. Neither of them spoke for a long stretch of seconds. Finally Claire found her voice. It came out thin. "Dad, this can't be right. Mom always said the house would stay in the family. Your mother and I made that decision when we trusted different things," I said. My own voice stayed steady. "I heard you two in the kitchen last fall. You were already dividing up what you thought was coming to you." Derek's eyes flicked to Claire. She didn't look at him. She stared at the papers on the table as if the words might rearrange themselves into something kinder. "We were just talking," she said. "People talk. It doesn't mean anything." "It meant enough for me to call Tom the next morning," I answered. Tom closed the folder and slid a copy across the table toward them. "Everything is already filed and witnessed. The foundation has been notified of the future bequest. There is nothing further to contest." Claire stood up so fast her chair scraped the hardwood. She walked to the front window and stared out at the quiet street where she had learned to ride a bike. Derek remained seated, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't list every small kindness I had shown them over the years or every late-night phone call when Claire needed advice. I simply sat there and let the new reality settle around the three of us. After a while Derek stood and put a hand on Claire's shoulder. She shrugged it off. They left without finishing the coffee I had poured. The front door closed with a soft click that sounded louder than it should have. I sat alone at the dining room table for a long time after Tom left. The late afternoon light moved across the floor the same way it had for decades. Outside, a neighbor's dog barked once and then went quiet. Inside the house the old clock kept marking the minutes. I never heard from Claire that evening. Or the next day. On the third day she sent a short text saying she needed time. I didn't reply. There was nothing left that words could fix. The house stayed quiet after that. I still mowed the lawn on Saturdays. I still sat on the front porch in the evenings and watched the streetlights come on one by one. Sometimes I thought about the conversation in the kitchen and how ordinary it had sounded until the meaning hit. Other times I thought about Carol and how she would have looked at me if she had heard those same words. The will stayed exactly as Tom and I had written it. The foundation sent a quiet letter of thanks and a promise that the future gift would help children who needed care the way Carol once had. I kept the letter in the same drawer where the old will used to live. Claire and Derek still lived 20 minutes away. They still worked the same jobs. On holidays the invitations went out and sometimes they came, sometimes they didn't. When they did come the conversations stayed careful and short. No one mentioned the reading again. No one needed to. I went on living in the house on Maple Ridge Lane, the same creaking floors, the same view of the oak tree Carol had planted the year Claire was born. Every so often I would catch myself listening for voices in the kitchen the way I had that Tuesday night. The house stayed silent. And that silence felt honest in a way the earlier years never had.